Howdy. Yeah, so I wanted to let me put it to you like this. Sometimes I'm sitting alone and I'm by myself and I ask myself, is ChatGPT or something like it, some type of artificial intelligence, going to take my job? So, in order to figure that out, what I'm going to do right now is ask ChatGPT some tax questions. I'm going to start with something that should be very basic questions for ChatGPT. And then from there, I'm going to ask it more complex questions to see how good of a tax professional it is. If I'm not 100% sure if ChatGPT is right, I'll look it up because I say this and I'll say it again. Not every tax professional is a expert in every area of the tax law, but I'm going to see how good it is. Now, a few during the last tax season, one of the tax companies I work for stated something on the lines of, this is when the craze of ChatGPT is the next big thing, right? And I was just kind of like, okay, whatever, relax here. They told everyone at the company that don't use ChatGPT for tax questions because it's not that good, blah 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 blah, and then they started trying to create their own little tax system that that could create questions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, okay, so you guys are trying to create your own tax system. You tell us not to use this tax system. Is it just because you fear that it's a competitor, or do you fear that it's going to be incorrect? Like, which one is it, or is it some combination of the both? I'd imagine it was some combination of the both. But I do think that ChatGPT is probably a lot better, especially ChatGPT 4, a lot better than what you know some people might give it credit for. Now, I have I have asked it questions in the past to see the answer, just to get an idea. If I'm doing tax research on a subject and I need to ask ChatGPT a question, I will ask it sometimes just to get an idea of what it might be the answer, and then I'll go verify it using more reliable resources. But sometimes just getting that general idea of what might be the case, and then going for there to try to confirm or deny that. Sometimes I already have an idea in my mind, like, okay, I think this is what how this is treated from a tax perspective, but let me see if that is correct. Ask ChatGPT, and then they say, okay, they give you your answer. That's another evidence to the it's called a hypothesis that this is the case, and then you can do more research for more reliable research, like going directly to the IRS code 26 or going to IRS pubs. I mean, not IRS code, RRC, Internal Revenue Code 26, which is where the you know tax code is, and then maybe check some IRS pubs, see if there's other information I can find, tax court cases, things of that nature. But we're going to start with ChatGPT, some of the basic stuff. Let's see what they have for us. Let's see. And I'm going to do some, I'm just multitasking here. All right. So it is somewhat of a concern that ChatGPT can take your job if you're, maybe not ChatGPT, but artificial intelligence. If it's good enough, if it's good enough to answer basic tax questions or complex tax questions, then why wouldn't people go to that? It doesn't cost that much. It's free, and you can pay for the paid version and ask it more questions than it might give you than on the not free version. All right, let's see what we got here. I'm going to ask it a basic question. Oh, also, this is in Spanish, but that's just because my ChatGPT is in Spanish. What is the standard? What is the standard deduction? Oops, I can't spell. And what is no, I don't want to ask what the standard deduction. I wanted to ask what a standard deduction and what is a itemized deduction. Vamos a ver. Oops, oops, it's speaking Spanish to me. Goodness gracious. All right. Oops, let me try that again. I love that you're speaking Spanish. But we need English. Okay. Okay, let's see how good this answer is as far as an answer as what is the standard deduction, what is the itemized deduction. And I'm going to let it talk instead of letting me talk.
Got it. Here's the explanation in English. 1. Standard deduction. This is a fixed amount that most taxpayers can subtract from their income without needing to provide any receipts or documentation of specific expenses. The amount of the standard deduction varies based on your filing status, like single, married, filing jointly, head of household, etc., and adjusts annually for inflation. It's straightforward because you don't have to itemize each deduction. 2. This allows you to list specific, eligible expenses that the IRS allows as deductions, such as mortgage interest, state and local taxes, charitable donations, and medical expenses, if they exceed a certain percentage of your income. If your deductible expenses add up to more than the standard deduction, itemizing might save you more on taxes. Generally, you choose whichever method gives you the larger deduction and saves you more on your taxes.
Okay, so right off the back, that was an absolutely stellar answer. Great answer. Can't complain. And quite frankly, I don't know if I could have said it in such a concise, accurate manner as that. I don't know. Maybe my job is at risk. We're going to keep seeing. We're going to ask you some more questions. Now, I want to ask it something more pertinent. Like, what is the specific standard deduction right now for 2024? Let me see what it gives me as an answer. What is the standard deduction for 2023 and 2024? The information for the 2024 standard deduction is out, so it should be able to answer that question if it is updated, which I think it should be. Okay, okay. Beautiful. That, and then it gives you actually gives you some links to potentially reliable sources to verify that information. So I'm going to take a peek at these and see what they look like. Um, let's see. Compartir. Yeah, so this is one of the links that they gave, and they just kind of talk about the standard deduction, a bunch of ads, of course. Everything has ads these days, just a ton of ads. And then right here, it's giving you the 2024. Goodness gracious, this website sucks. You scroll a little bit and it just goes everywhere. So the website itself sucks, but the information on the website is accurate. So that's what matters. Let me just check to see. It says something about my computer says something about my mic is not doing something that it's supposed to do. So I'm just gonna check. Okay, fine. My mic is being fine. Okay. So right here, it shows exactly the right information for 2023. And for 2024, it shows the right information. So the links are there. That is good. As far as this link that they get provided, inflation adjustments for 2024. This is on the TurboTax website. verified by a CPA apparently, and then written by this EA, which shout out to the EAs out there. We need to do better branding. We need to do better branding. Let's see here. Anyway, what is a standard deduction and related inflation adjustments? So it's going through explaining all of this. I would imagine not even one person would want to sit here and read this unless they're a tax professional or someone who's trying to be a tax professional or someone who's just really interested in learning about taxes, which I'd imagine a very large percentage of people are not, which leads me to wonder why I'm doing this in the first place. Anyway, so yeah, I think this is a really good answer. And then they gave another link to another blog, and I'm going to check this one out here. Okay, this guy with a nice beard going on. And what is the standard deduction for 2023, 2024? And it provides that information right there, very fast, in your face. You don't even need to wait. Also, they don't talk about whether or not the blind, but let's see if ChatGPT talks about blind. Okay, so one thing they do not talk about here is that if you are, if you qualify as blind, you get another additional deduction. So right now what we're sitting at is this is overall really, really good. It has accurate numbers and it gives you a good breakdown of what the standard deduction is. It does it very clearly and concisely. But what it doesn't do, from what I can tell, is it doesn't say anything about blindness. I'm going to ask it why it didn't say that. Oh, no, wait a second, my dumbass. It says it right here. Or for those who are blind. Okay, there you go. Perfect. Perfect answer then. I have nothing to complain. I was looking for something to complain about. I found it, and I was wrong. Look at that. Perfect. So ChatGPT is a thorough, at least with this very simple question, I think it works well. So what about I'm going to ask it some more basic questions and then go from there. What are some more basic questions? Let's see. 12 minutes have passed already. That is crazy. All right, let's see here. What are tax brackets? And what are the 2024 tax brackets? Eventually, they're probably going to tell me that, oh, you can't have any more questions. You don't have any more questions that you can ask. So I'm probably going to, I'm going to try to ask it questions related to 2024 in the beginning, things that, more likely to change over time first. And then eventually they might say, well, you can't use ChatGPT 4 anymore. You got to break you down, push you back down to the regular ChatGPT. At least that's what it does on my phone. I don't know if it's going to do the same thing on the website itself. We're going to have to see. All right. I'm just going to make this the entire screen on my end. All right. That actually makes it look like a little smaller. Well, we're going to make it bigger. All right. Let's see. I'm going to see if I can't just move me up a bit. We're just going to save that for now. All right. Let's see what we got. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger. There we go. That's good enough. All right, so here we are. Let's let ChatGPT read it, because once again, ChatGPT's voice is probably a lot better than mine.
Tax brackets in the US are marginal tax rates that apply to layers of taxable income. So income is taxed at different rates as it increases. For instance, in 2024, if you're a single filer with $50,000 in taxable income, you'd pay 10% on the first 11,600s, 12% on the amount from 11,601 to 47,100, and 22% on the income from $47,151 to $50,000. Here's a breakdown of the 2024 federal tax brackets by filing status. And hash single filers, 10 income up to 11,000 hash, 12 cent on income over 1166 to 47,150. 22 cent on income over 47,150 to 100,525. 24 cent on income over 100,525 to 191,950. 32 cent on income over 191,150 to 243,785. 35 cent.
Okay, we don't need to listen to it, go through all of them. But once again, it gives a pretty good answer. It gives a good answer. It gives the brackets. Now, I don't know 100% sure if these brackets are accurate, but I'm just going to assume that they are. They almost certainly are. I can check some of the links that they gave me. They gave me links. But once again, I think overall, it looks like it's providing good information, and also this is for 2023. Let me see here. This is 2024, 0 to 600. It says for 2024, but these numbers usually get updated. So I'm gonna actually check to see, make sure if these are the updated figures and not from last year. They should be different. 44, 712. Okay, so it looks like it's adjusted for inflation. I would have to check. Okay, 2024 tables right here. This is marginal rates for single individuals. Okay, yeah. So these are accurate numbers. Once again, ChatGPT wins. It does a good job, very concise, gives you all the information you need, and it's accurate information. It's also got the standard deduction right. So far, I think the ChatGPT is a really good tax professional so far. But I haven't asked it any difficult tax questions yet. Like, let's say, for example, what is a difficult tax question that I could ask it? I'm going to try to bump up the ante a little bit and say, one thing I think it will have trouble with is state tax returns. So let's ask it a question about state tax returns. I worked in Pennsylvania PA for the whole year. Let's say the whole year. But I live in Maryland. This is something that I'm pretty familiar with, so I know approximately what the right answer should be. And I want to see what they say. But I live in Maryland. How do I file my state tax returns? I spelled tax returns wrong, but that's okay. Once it's finished typing, I'm going to let it read it out loud so I can do less of the talking and I can have a little back and forth conversation. See, okay, look at that. It says, you have reached your free limit of ChatGPT 4. Okay, well, I'm going to keep asking it questions, but it might be not as accurate because of this limit. But we'll see. I plan to get the ChatGPT 4, paying for it eventually, but today has not been that day. Let it read to me.
live in Maryland but work in Pennsylvania, you'll need to file a resident state tax return in Maryland and a non-resident state tax return in Pennsylvania. Here's how the process generally works. 1. Pennsylvania non-resident return. File a PA-40 form, Pennsylvania state tax return, as a non-resident to report the income you earned in Pennsylvania. Since Pennsylvania taxes income at a flat rate, 3.07% for 2023, you'll calculate your tax based solely on the income you earned from your job there. Number 2. Maryland resident return. File a Maryland state tax return as a resident to report all your income, including that earned in Pennsylvania. Maryland allows you to claim a credit for taxes paid to other states, which helps to avoid double taxation. The credit will reduce your Maryland tax owed by the amount you paid to Pennsylvania up to Maryland's tax rate on the same income. 4.3. To claiming the credit. To claim the tax credit on your Maryland return, complete the Maryland Form 502CR, which helps calculate the credit for taxes paid to Pennsylvania. Attach both your Maryland return and this form when filing to ensure you get the credit properly applied. Most tax software will guide you through filing in multiple states and calculating the appropriate credits. If your income situation is complex, it could also be helpful to consult a tax professional for assistance. 25 source, 26 source.
Okay, so I think we finally tripped it up. Now, from my understanding, just doing Pennsylvania and Maryland tax returns, Maryland and Pennsylvania have state reciprocity. So I was just double checking to make sure that they still do. Sometimes states can change their tax laws and whatnot, but usually reciprocity doesn't change too frequently. Maryland and Pennsylvania have reciprocity. So generally speaking, what happens is you pay taxes in the state in which you actually live, and you don't actually have to file a credit for anything. You're not supposed to file a credit. You're not even supposed to get a credit. You're supposed to file a tax return, and unless they withheld taxes in Pennsylvania because you didn't tell them that you live in Maryland, you work in Pennsylvania. You're usually supposed to file the taxes in the location in which you live, if the place has reciprocity with the state that you have. The state in which you live. And I'm about to come and show that. Right here. This is from the Maryland website, it seems. So this says, for example, when you live in one state and work in the other. If I'm living in Maryland but working in D.C., Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, how should my state income tax return be filed? You should file a resident state return with Maryland. Generally, taxpayers should file within the jurisdiction in which they live. If you live in Maryland, file with Maryland. If you live in D.C., etc., you should file with your home state. Residents who commute every day to work in D.C., Pennsylvania, etc., have taxes withheld from that jurisdiction should file a tax return with the appropriate form that the locality to obtain a refund. Okay, so ChatGPT kind of got this question wrong. This is one of the big things that I find, even with tax professionals, that is one of the big difficult things for them to answer, is things related to tax questions on the state level. And this is a perfect example of, based off what I heard, and I was kind of doing multitasking at the same time, but this says something about claiming a credit for taxes paid to Pennsylvania. That's not how you're supposed to do it. I'm going to see if it corrects itself when I say that is incorrect. Figure out how you got it wrong. That is not correct. I'm just going to see what it says when I say it's not correct. I just told you that is not correct, but we're going to see how it... I told it it's not correct. I'm going to see what it says upon me saying that.
I apologize for the confusion. Let's clarify how to file your state taxes when you live in Maryland but work in Pennsylvania. 1. Pennsylvania non-resident return. As a non-resident, you need to file a PA-40 form with the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue. This form reports only the income you earned from Pennsylvania sources. You'll pay Pennsylvania's flat income tax rate of 3.07% on that income. 2. Maryland resident return. You'll also file a Maryland state tax return, Form 502, as a resident. You must report all your income, including what you earned in Pennsylvania. 3. Claiming a credit in Maryland. To avoid double taxation, Maryland allows you to claim a credit for taxes paid to Pennsylvania. This is done using Form 502CR. The credit will offset the Maryland taxes owed based on the income you earned in Pennsylvania. Make sure to keep the documentation of the taxes you paid
Okay.
to Pennsylvania handy.
So once again, it just repeated what it said the first time, which was not 100% accurate. Now, if you have like a rental property there, perhaps that's a different scenario. But we're talking about you're working in one state, but you live in the other. That's what we're talking about. Sometimes in certain states, and I'm not 100% sure about Maryland and Pennsylvania, if you have like a rental property or something like that in the state, they still want you to pay taxes on that rental property that's in that state, even if there's a reciprocity agreement. It depends on the reciprocity agreement and how it goes. But generally speaking, if you work in one state as a job, you have a job in one state and you live in another, but those states have reciprocity, you don't have to file credits and they shouldn't be withholding taxes. So right here, this once again has mentioned absolutely nothing about that. Only thing it says is file a Pennsylvania tax return, file a Maryland tax return. It doesn't tell you the proper way of going about doing it. So in this particular scenario, I'm not saying that. So far up until this point, ChatGPT has given correct answers, but now we've reached a point where I asked it actually somewhat of a difficult tax question, and then it didn't answer correctly. So this is especially, but I think this is generally the case with tax professionals in general. So is this any worse than a tax professional? I think this is the type of especially a new tax professional, someone who's just getting started. This is probably the type of answer that if they have some experience but not a lot of experience, they might give an answer like this. So is that bad? Yes. But is it like worse than a human being? That's what we're comparing it to. It's saying, is it worse than a human being? Perhaps not. I'm going to see what I'm just going to tell it. I'm going to try to lead it towards the right answer and see what it says then. I'm going to drop a but they have a reciprocity agreement. I'm just going to give it a hint and see if it then tells me the right answer after giving me the wrong answer. I'm going to let it speak to me.
You're right. Pennsylvania and Maryland have a reciprocal tax agreement, which simplifies filing for residents who work across state lines. Here's how it works. 1. Reciprocity agreement. Since you live in Maryland and work in Pennsylvania, you should not have to pay Pennsylvania state income tax on your wages. Instead, you will only file a Maryland tax return. 2.
Okay.
Maryland tax
Okay.
return. You will file a Maryland state tax return, Form 502, as a resident. You report all your income, including what you earned in Pennsylvania. You do not need to file a Pennsylvania return because of the reciprocity agreement. 3. Employer withholding. Make sure that your employer in Pennsylvania is aware of your Maryland residency so they can stop withholding Pennsylvania state taxes from your paycheck. You may need to fill out Form Rev 4119, Employees Non-Resident Tax.
Okay, I think we get the point here. So at the end of the day, two things. One thing I want to say is that it annoys the living crap out of me. It annoys the hell out of me when ChatGPT says things like and ah and things like that. It drives me freaking insane. It drives me insane. I don't need ums and ahs, and it's already reading at absolutely like 1 miles per hour. The last thing I need is you saying ums and ahs and uhs and uhs. I don't know if y'all heard it, but that's exactly what just happened. It's annoying. Off topic. Right here, now this is a more accurate answer. This is what the answer they should have given as well from the beginning. This is the answer they should have given from the beginning. And if, depending on if Maryland has like or Maryland and Pennsylvania has a clause or whatever where like if you have money that is earned like from a some type of source, a rental income or something like that from that state, then maybe you have to pay income to that state. Maybe then you talk about credits and all of that. But when you're talking strictly about a reciprocity agreement, this is what, as far as working in one state, living in the other. I didn't say anything about rental property. I said working. This is the answers he should have given from the beginning. It was not correct. So I think that it has issues. I'm going to ask it, why didn't it give that answer from the first place? And I'm also going to ask it to not do ums and ahs. I hate the ums and ahs. It drives me insane. It's unnecessary. It's a waste of time. And I can see if it's a human being, but it's not a human being. It's a robot. So you don't need to you don't need to ah, you don't need any of that. Anyway, I'm just gonna give a quick read to this. I appreciate your patience. I apologize for not including any important details about the reciprocity agreement initially. Here's a clearer summary. I'm not going to read the summary. We already read the summary. So it got one question wrong. That's 2 out of 3. The state questions tend to be a little bit more difficult for tax professionals and for apparently ChatGPT as well. I think that unless you're very familiar with an area in tax, like, or I'm sorry, a specific state return, then it can be very confusing. Now, if you're someone who's in Maryland like me, I was in Maryland and in Pennsylvania, I'm familiar that they have a reciprocity agreement. It's pretty simple to understand how you would deal with that if you're working in one, you're living in the other. I've done quite a few New Jersey, New York tax returns. So someone's working in New York, living in New Jersey, which is actually pretty common. So I've done a lot of tax returns like that, so I understand how it's done. That situation requires credits because New York basically is just like, I'm going to tax you on your income, and that's that. They don't like having reciprocity agreements. I don't even know if they do have reciprocity agreements, but if they do, it's very few and far between. New York wants to tax the crap out of you as much as they possibly can. And so does Massachusetts, by the way. Massachusetts is one of those states as well. Massachusetts is not even that great of a place. If you're from Massachusetts, hey, I'm sorry. But it's cold. They have Boston. They have the Boston Tea Party. I've never been to Boston. Maybe Boston's a nice place. But so far, not so good. 2 out of 3. That's a 66% on a test. But we haven't asked it more questions. Let me see. Let me think of another question. Let's see. This is always an interesting one. Can I deduct the cost of a pool as a medical expense? That is a TPU. I don't understand why this right here doesn't even give the option as medical. I mean, it's one word away from medical. But anyway, letter away from medical. All right, let's see what it says. Can I deduct the cost of a pool as a medical expense? Okay. Once again, on the federal questions, it seems like it gives pretty good answers. I'm going to listen to it, though. I've kind of skimmed through it already, just looking at it. It seems like it's giving good answers.
You can potentially deduct the cost of a swimming pool as a medical expense under specific conditions. According to IRS guidelines, medical expenses must be primarily for the treatment of a medical condition to qualify for a deduction. Here are some key points to consider. 1. Medical necessity. If a pool is prescribed by a doctor for medical reasons, such as for rehabilitation or physical therapy, it may be deductible. This could include conditions like arthritis, obesity, or other health issues where swimming provides therapeutic benefits. 2. Expenses and adjustments. You can deduct the cost of constructing or maintaining the pool, but only to the extent that the expenses exceed any increase in the value of your home. For example, if the pool adds $10,000 to your home's value and you spend $20,000 on it, only the excess $10,000 may qualify as a medical expense. 3. Documentation. It's essential to keep thorough documentation, including a doctor's prescription, invoices, and any evidence showing the pool is used primarily for medical purposes. 4. Filing requirements. To claim this deduction, you must itemize your deductions on Schedule A of your tax return. For detailed information and guidance on the specifics, you can refer to IRS Publication 502, which covers medical and dental expenses, or consult a tax professional.
Okay, so right off the back, that's a good answer. It's a really good answer. I can't complain about that answer. One of the downsides about ChatGPT for this purposes, it seems that it struggles with state tax return questions. I'm going to see a very specific tax question like that. Let's see. Let's just ask it a random state question like who can qualify for the earned income credit for California returns. I'm gonna see if it can give me some reasonable answers to this question. So far, it seems like the state tax returns it has been struggling a little bit, but this is a different tax question. Maybe it can. So it says here to qualify for the California Earned Income Tax Credit in 2024, you must meet the following criteria. You must be at least the age of 18 or have a qualifying child. Your age must be, your earned income must be 30,000 or less for the tax year. The tax identification, you must have a valid social security number or an individual taxpayer identification number for you, your spouse, any qualifying children. Filing status. You cannot file married filing separately if you are married. I don't know why you would file married filing separately if you weren't married. But I guess they're just adding that to the end of that. If you qualify and have a child under 6 at the end of the tax year, you may be eligible for the young child tax credit, which is potential additional cash back. Okay. Now, I'm not 100% sure on the actual income limits. I'm pretty sure that's about right. As far as, because I was doing a tax return earlier like a little bit earlier this month, and I believe that's accurate. And your California tax return. And then at the same time, you have everything else seems accurate based off of my knowledge of California tax returns. So it seems to me like this particular question did not stump it, and that was good. So the more complicated tax questions, as far as something specific that you're asking it, seems like it does good with that. Like specific information that is verifiable there's data information on that subject. When it's more of a general question about procedure, I think maybe sometimes especially when there's a procedure that there's two different options for that same procedure, depending on how you go about doing that. Will depend on the specific circumstances. It may have a little bit harder trouble going about doing that. For example, in some situations, you file the credit for the state taxes that you pay to another state. Sometimes you file a refund from that other state and then just pay the taxes to your own state. So let's see if we can think of anything else. Let's think about something outside of individual. Well, I don't know. Most people are focused on individual taxes, so let's keep it individual tax related for now. Maybe later in life I'll do a advanced business tax type of thing. But like, let's do something business tax related, but like on an individual tax return, like a Schedule C type situation. Let's think. I work. I run an Airbnb, and I put it on a Schedule E. But some if I is that a problem? We're going to see what they say. Using Schedule E to report income from Airbnb is common and generally acceptable for tax purposes, provided certain conditions are met. Here's what you need to consider. Rental activity. If you rent out the property for more than 14 days a year and use it personally no more than 14 days or 10% of the total days rented, you can report the income on expenses on Schedule E, supplemental income and loss. This allows you to deduct related expenses such as mortgage interest, property taxes, repairs, and management fees. Self-employment considerations. If you provide substantial services to your guests like regular cleaning and meal, or IRS may consider you have a business or of operating a hotel or bed and breakfast, which could require you to report income on a Schedule C instead. Schedule C typically involves self-employment tax obligation, while Schedule E does not. Passive activity rules. Income from rental activity generally considered passive, which means that losses might be limited if you don't actively participate in the managing of the property. If you meet certain income thresholds or qualify as a real estate professional, you might be able to deduct losses against other income. Okay. And then it talks about local stuff. So that seems like a pretty good answer. I'm going to ask it another question about this. Let's see here. If I provide substantial services, can I deduct more? Let me rephrase that. Will I be subject to the passive loss rules? Oops, my dumbass. I think it knows what I probably meant. I was off by one letter. Okay, so first off, it starts off by answering something that is not really related to my question, but it's the impact on passive loss rules. When your rental activity is treated as a business on a Schedule C, you are not subject to the passive loss limitations that apply to activities reported on Schedule E. This means you can potentially deduct from your rental activities against other sources of income such as wages or other businesses and income. Material participation. If you materially participate in a rental activity, it further supports the classification of activities as non-passive, etc., etc. I would say this is a fairly good answer, and if you need more information, it looks like it gives you some links. I want to see what these links take us. Let's see. Okay. Apparently these links takes us nowhere. All right, the links. I'm clicking the links that don't do anything. All right, well, the links do nothing for us. We cannot do anything with those links. All right, but that's still a pretty good answer, I would say. I want to see if perhaps ChatGPT has. What about tax planning? That's another big thing. Maybe it might struggle more with tax planning than it does with tax, just general tax law questions. I don't, but see, that tax planning is a little bit more difficult to ask it about because it's very specific. Like it depends on the situation. So we're going to see what I can do. Let's say, like, I'm just going to ask it, can it help me with tax planning? Let's start there. Okay, it says it can. And then it gives a list of 10 different things that it can help you with tax loss harvesting, review your filing status, estimate quarterly taxes, consult a tax professional CPA. They don't add an EA. Where's the EAs at? Come on, give us some respect. Let's see here. And for rental properties, make sure tracks are expensive. Okay, so it doesn't really go into anything like really super fancy. I'm gonna ask it for like more deep stuff, like something that's really advanced. All right, let's see what it says about that. It says certainly. It's very confident in its abilities. Consult a tax professional. It keeps saying consult a tax professional. Of course, it's going to say that. It gets worried that you're going to, if it gets bad information, they can. I don't know, probably worried about getting sued. Everyone's worried about getting sued. All right, real estate investments. Okay, yeah, real estate. That's not bad. Can provide tax, 1031 exchange, income shifting. Income shifting, moving money to a local income member in a lower tax bracket. This can be done through family limited partnerships or trust. However, it's essential to comply with IRS rules for gift tax implication. Seems like a lot of paying less in taxes requires you to give your money to some other human being. All right, let's see here. Charitable, but I've heard of that one. That's a reasonable one to some degree. Charitable contribution, donations, donating appreciated assets. Once again, this is another one where it requires you to give money to some other human being. It's not, I mean, if you're trying to avoid paying taxes, but you end up paying $100 to avoid $20 in taxes, or you pay $100 to avoid $37 in taxes, I guess, I guess that's good. But I don't. I mean, if your goal is to have more of your money in your pocket, that's not. Selling investments at a loss to offset capital gains could reduce taxes. Blah blah blah. Then it talks about the wash sale rules. That's good. Maximize retirement contribution. That's ask for advance. That's pretty basic 101. Anyone can do that. Let's see here. I'm going to ask it a more specific question, see if it gives me anything like really, really like good stuff. Tax reduction techniques that don't require me to give my money to away permanently. I didn't want y'all to see that. I would see me struggle to spell permanently. That would have been a bad day for me. It's bad enough I had to tell y'all about it. Depreciation. I think he meant to say depreciation. Why is it struggling to spell? I mean, I struggle to spell, but I'm a human being. This is struggling to spell. Investing, it looks like. It says T-vesting. Maybe that's a thing that I don't know about. Let's see here. Here are some things for high income earners that will allow you to retain over your assets without giving money away permanently. Maximizing tax deferred account. This thing loves tax deferred accounts. Tax advantage investments, municipal bonds, HSAs, immigrant legal resource. Interesting. That's from California. It seems like maybe it's thinking that I'm still talking about California related taxes. Maybe that's part of the problem. If contributing to an HSA can reduce your taxable income while allowing you to grow funds tax free for medical expenses, withdrawing for qualified medical expenses, also tax free. Unused funds can be rolled over for future use. Beautiful. That's not bad. T vesting, offsetting capital gains by selling that have lost. This is repeating what it said before. Depreciation. You're still kind of giving money for that, but depreciation makes sense. Business expenses are not a bad idea. This is, I think, it's struggling to spell. Investing in real estate. Yeah. So, tax planning wise, I think I don't know. It's probably because I'm not asking it too specific of a question. I think if I was asking it more, gave it more detailed information about my particular situation, and then asked it for more detailed tax planning ideas, then like this is my situation. This is the situation I'm in. Give me some tax plans. I think that it probably could do better, but right now, what it looks like is just giving very generic, and its spelling ability for some reason has decreased substantially since I started this video. But who am I to talk about spelling ability? But T investing is definitely not. I think it meant actually capital loss investing or capital loss catch or T vesting. Maybe that's what some people call it. I don't know. But definitely depreciation has an in there. All right. Looks like we're about an hour in. I think we've got an idea of its ability. I think I want to see if I can ask it something related to the video I did before. The video I did just before this one, which was about capital gains. Is it possible for me to make $100,000 in dividends and pay nothing in taxes? Now, yesterday I made the video and I showed that it is 100% possible. I'm going to see what ChatGPT says. It is possible to receive 100,000 in dividends and pay little to nothing in taxes under specific circumstances. Okay, look at that. Perfect. All right, so we got an idea. I was just looking for an idea of ChatGPT's tax advice capabilities. And what I've seen here so far is that it is really, really good if you ask it. Well, not really, really good. It's good if you ask it a specific question. Specific question is not related to state taxes. And if it's a state tax related question, maybe it's like a very specific state tax question. Maybe it would do better, but it doesn't really seem to do that well with more. I think state taxes is always going to be a little bit more of an issue for it, but I could be wrong. Federal taxes, though, it seems like it's pretty good at giving the right answer or giving a general answer. And if this is just the beginning, you got to think about it. This is the beginning. I guess this is ChatGPT 4, but I mean, you say 10, 20 years, if it's already doing, it could pretty much answer all of the basic tax questions that a tax professional could answer. I mean, I don't think it could prepare a tax return for you just yet, but you know, they're probably working on that now. And I know, I'm pretty sure H&R Block and TurboTax both are working on building softwares that can replace human beings. So I'm thinking that I've heard the CEO say we're not trying to replace human beings. We're trying to integrate them with the AI. Blah 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 blah. If they felt that they could reasonably get the AI to do the same job as a human being, and that the human beings, the customers, would accept AI instead of human being, I think that whether it be H&R Block, not Jackson Hewitt, TurboTax, or some other company, TaxSlayer, I think that they all would do it. So, or even ChatGPT, if they could create a software that could do that, I think that they would do it. So it's not a matter of if they would do it. It's a matter of would customers accept it? Because a lot of customers still will want to interact with a human being. But if you're growing up and you're used to dealing with machines and used to dealing with computers, maybe it gives you less anxiety. Maybe you prefer to deal with human beings. If it becomes more accurate than human beings, then I think that, or less prone to errors, then I think you could definitely find yourself in a situation where jobs are being taken. Now, I think jobs have already been lost to computer algorithms and coding and all of that to some degree. The fact that it's so easy to do your tax return by yourself nowadays, I think, especially if you have a simple tax return, you can just take a picture of it and then basically it's done. Answer some basic questions about your personal situation just so it knows how you should be taxed on that income, like if you're married, if you have kids, and then from there you're basically done your tax return. It's answer some very very basic questions, take a picture of it, you're done. With the IRS new system coming out, the IRS system is basically lowering the cost theoretically of doing tax returns. There's also been free locations where you can do your tax returns for free for years. I mean, with TurboTax, you and H&R Block, there's situations where you can do it for free. Of course, with corporate type places, they're always trying to find little ways to make your tax returns cost more money. It starts off free, but then you accidentally click, I want to maximize my deductions, because who doesn't want to maximize their deductions? And all of a sudden now you're paying for something that should be free, which is annoying that a lot of these companies do stuff like that. But especially if you have to work for one that does stuff like that. But well, I technically don't have to work for one like that, but I'm just saying, like, if you do work for one and then you say, well, I want to maximize my deductions, the next thing you know, you're paying for a product that you don't really need. Yeah, because I think the companies know that everyone wants to maximize their deductions. Everyone wants to maximize their credits. Everyone wants to pay the least amount of taxes. When I look at, I want to maximize my deductions, what I see there is I want to pay as least taxes as possible. And I'd imagine a lot of people think that as well. So when they have questions like that, they put there, it's a manipulation tactic. But with the free things, like, IRS trying to do the free file system, other companies like Free File USA or something like that trying to do free systems, I think a lot of these systems are going to get rid of the need for that. It's already cutting into competition a little bit. Back in the day when you had to do the tax returns by hand, I think that tax professionals were probably significantly more in demand. As soon as you got rid of the need to do tax returns by hand and you could use software, the demand for tax professionals almost certainly dropped significantly. Now you have software, it does all the math work for you. You don't have to do each worksheet by hand. It takes less time. Everyone, I think, is probably happy that you don't have to do it by hand anymore, even tax professionals. With that being said, AI is a different thing than just software preparing the tax return for you. The AI has the benefit of being able to provide rapid and accurate and concise information to you about whatever question you have. Now, this can actually help tax professionals if they know how to use it. If they know how to use it, and they also know how to make sure, check the sources. Like if you were kind of just like, you just need a quick brain remember of what the standard deduction is, because that's something that changes every single year. Maybe it's the top of the year, and maybe you just haven't had it put in your brain yet. You say, okay, it's 14,600, or you need a quick reminder of how do you calculate the deduction for children who are, the standard deduction is a little bit different for children than it are for adults. Then you can get a quick breakdown of that and use that information if you need to do that. But what happens when the situation comes where they can do tax? The software can pretty much do the preparation. You just basically provide all your documents to the tax software. The software can ask you the right questions based off the information you have. Maybe it can ask you some questions that may generally be good questions to ask. I can see that happening in the near future, 10, 20 years. Is it a concern for me? To some degree, yes. But I think that there is no immediate concern. And I think as long as you kind of keep your brain sharp, you are able to learn, you keep your capacity to learn new things outside of the realm of things that you're familiar with. I think that you can probably pivot. The downside to pivoting, if AI takes your job or whatever the case may be, is that probably there's a good amount of other people who will be pivoting to those other areas that don't require or that do require a human element. With that being said, I think the more complex advanced tax returns, like large S corporations, large C corporations, large partnerships, or even medium size partnerships, or even just basic partnerships, tax returns, corporation tax returns, I think they'll still require human beings for a very good amount of time in the future. The best thing that you could do, take the money that you get, invest it, and maybe even hedge it a little bit. Maybe hedge your bets a little bit. What are the companies that are going to be the companies that create the AI that might take your job? Invest in those companies if you can. On ChatGPT, I don't think you can invest in that. I think it's a private company, I'm pretty sure, making a good amount of money. And some of the other AI companies are still private. Google is public. They're doing stuff in AI. There's probably other ones that are doing stuff in AI. TurboTax is doing stuff in AI. They love talking about it. H&R Block probably doing stuff in AI. So you can probably make some investments in these companies, hedge your bets a little bit, see what happens. But I'm not confident that if this is right here, and I know I didn't show a lot, I didn't ask it a lot of questions here today, but I've asked it plenty of questions in the past, just on my own. And I'm trying to do research on a tax question, and then I'll ask it a question, then maybe go find a more reliable source once I have kind of like an idea, and then go verify that. I've seen that it's pretty good. I see that it also makes errors like I showed here today, but it is pretty good, and this is only going to get better from here. So then you have to ask yourself, well, if it's only going to get better from here, at what point does it equate to me? This thing can already answer questions better than a good amount of tax professionals, I can guarantee you. And by tax professionals, I mean it very, very loosely, meaning people who are paid to prepare tax returns. Not everyone who's paid to prepare tax returns are really like that in it. Like they basically, maybe they study a little bit of tax, but for the most part, they just learn how to use the software really well. Maybe if they run into a question that they don't know, maybe they do some research on it or something like that. But for the most part, what they do is they've never taken a class. They've never studied taxes ever. They kind of just use the software to do the work and then charge people for doing their tax returns. These types of people, preparing very basic tax returns, don't really know what they're doing. That I think that they'll be a little bit more. I think the software that exists, plus ChatGPT and things like it, is already better than them. It can't prepare tax returns for people. They still need someone to type in the information. But I do think, as far as providing accurate, correct information about specific subjects, I think that it's already probably better than people who are like pretty bad. They kind of just, they do taxes during the tax season, and then for the rest of the year, they're not even thinking about tax. They don't really keep up with the tax law, none of that. They just do taxes on the tax season. Maybe they don't even do that many. And then for the rest of the year, they kind of just do some other thing. They kind of just use that as a side job. These people, I think they will be the first ones to go, I think. Because ChatGPT, I think, is already on their heels. It's already on their heels as far as their ability to answer questions properly about tax questions. So from the consulting standpoint, they probably have, and this is only individual tax returns I did today. I haven't asked it about corporate tax returns or partnership tax returns in this video. I have done it on my own private basis, just trying to get information about it. And quite frankly, it is good. It's not perfect, but it's good. Especially ChatGPT 4. I think I ran out of ChatGPT 4 questions that it allows me to ask. So I think it pushed me down to some lower level of ChatGPT and started doing some weird spelling and all of that. But generally speaking, even with the higher end questions, it like corporate tax returns, partnership tax returns, it seems to have answered the questions fairly well when I asked them. Now, with that being said, there is still required for someone to actually, at this point in time, it could change in the future. At this point in time, it still is required for someone to actually do the data entry. There's a human being that needs to do the data entry. That is slowly becoming not the case already with TurboTax. You can take a picture of a lot of your information. You can import a lot of your information. Same thing with other softwares, I'm pretty sure as well. You can import it from you can import your 1099B, which is your brokerage statement from, like if you're buying, selling stocks, bonds, other securities, you can import that already. And it basically will prepare all of the tax documents based off of that for you. W-2, you take a picture of your W-2, boom, it's already filled out. Everything that needs to be filled out related to that, pretty much already done for you. Now, there might be some questions more specific that you need to answer, like if you have an HSA. Well, there were some questions that they literally just can't know about your HSA that you have to give it more information on. How long does it take until you can just talk to the software? You don't even need to type it in or do the data entry by hand. You can just say, yeah, I had HSA, I had qualifying health insurance all year, I had high deductible, blah, 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 blah. And then based off your answers that you provided by your voice, it answers the questions and fills out the tax return for you. How far away is that? You can already take a picture of it, and then it basically fills out most of the documents. It's just that little bit of extra step that it takes to just go from I still need a human being to do the data entry, to human being just needs to say the information to the phone and it does it for you, or computer, whatever. A lot of people are doing their tax returns on their phone nowadays, and that's increasing over time. That's why I said phone. And then when it comes down to tax planning, this can start doing some basic tax planning for people. The vast majority of individuals have very, very simple tax situations, and they can pretty much do like some basic tax planning, tax reduction strategies just by asking ChatGPT. The information that they gave when I asked it, can we do some tax planning? It's not bad information. I mean, some of it is just like give your money to other people and never get it back, and you'll lose. You don't have to worry about taxes anymore. That's good from a heart. If you're given to a charity that you care about, you would give away anyway, money to anyway. Then that's great. If your only objective is to give less money to the government so that you have more of your own money so that you can buy things or invest it, then that's maybe not the best strategy. Of course, tax deferred retirement accounts, good strategy. It seems like ChatGPT really likes that. Investing in real estate, obviously a big one that it talks about, which is a good way to reduce taxes. That's a big part of how Donald Trump seems to be paying very little in taxes. Is through his real estate investments and also qualifying as a full-time real estate investor. I don't know if he still would qualify as a full-time real estate investor, given the fact that he's basically a politician now. I don't know how that works under the current circumstances, but it is interesting. It is interesting. Whenever I think about this, and when I actually start looking at the details, and when I look at what companies that I'm working for are doing, It seems like they are working towards that. Another factor to consider is the fact that certain tax related stuff probably can be shipped overseas to places where the cost of labor is significantly less. How much of that's going to play a role in reducing the tax the requirement for tax professionals? Who knows? But I think for the consumer, not from the tax professional standpoint, but for the consumer, I think this is good. One thing it does is it allows people to get fast answers to their tax questions. It kind of democratizes tax information in a way, and more, perhaps even more advanced tax information. And it can be stated to people in a way that is clear, concise, and usually pretty simple. And even if it's not simple, then you can ask like ChatGPT or something similar to it, oh, well, can you clarify that? Or can you say it in a way that's simpler? Or can you say it in a different way that perhaps will help me understand? Now, I haven't really done that so much with tax questions, but I have more so done that with more like other related questions, like certain finance questions that I'm curious about, or economic questions, or you know, whatever subject that I'm thinking about at that moment. That's simple. So it definitely is good, you know, and it's getting better. So I think that's one of the big things that I've heard people say. Well, we will never be replaced by computers or AI, but that ignores the fact in the tax world that there's already been people replaced by, let's call them algorithms or code. Code has already decreased the demand for tax professionals. There's more people on the planet, so there's probably more tax professionals now than there were years ago. But under the same circumstances nowadays, you have the same amount of people, you get rid of tax software, you keep the demand or need for taxes to be prepared, then yes, you're probably going to want someone who can do the math for you, who can do the worksheets for you, all the stuff that the software is doing. The vast majority of people would not want to do that on their own. They would probably hire somebody. However, with tax software and self-preparation, there's still the opportunity that, if someone needs help with their tax return or the tax situation, it still offers the benefit that a lot of the times they'll run into an issue and then they want to talk to a tax professional. That's a situation where even self-preparation can be a benefit for the tax professional. From the individual client or consumer perspective, or just the citizen perspective, you have a lot more options now. You can go to one of these. I think H&R Block has it. Also, I think, and I know TurboTax has it, and I'm pretty sure H&R Block has where you can talk to a tax professional. Quite frankly, I'm pretty sure you can talk to a tax professional without paying first. You are preparing your tax return. You're running into an issue. You talk to a tax professional. They give you hopefully good advice. And then from there, you didn't pay a dime. Now, you might say, well, the TurboTax professionals aren't that good. The H&R Block tax professionals are not that good. I don't know. I have not really talked to all of them. I've heard some very, very bad horror stories from people I know personally and also from the internet. But I think that not every there are really, really, really good tax professionals. I presume at H&R Block, and I definitely know at TurboTax that there are good tax professionals who have been in the career for a long time. A lot of the times, there are people who are retired, and they've been, retired CPAs who've been doing tax their entire career, but then they've decided that they don't want to they don't want to sell their company, or they don't want to really do tax for like a big company. They kind of just want to work from home, relax a little bit. Maybe they retired, got bored, looked for something else they could do to make a little bit of extra money, things like that. So they're knowledgeable, but they are just, granted, knowing whether or not the person you're talking to, when you can call the phone and get whoever, that can be a little bit more difficult. But that is still nice for the from the consumer's perspective that you have that option. You have ChatGPT that can help you with specifically the more basic tax questions and giving you knowledge about tax in general. And then also it can give you links to more reliable resources. And maybe some of the resources that they give are not like very like super reliable sources like IRS website or the actual tax code, like from the actual written laws that are there, or court cases or IRS pronouncements. But someone is calling me. I'll answer that in a second. But you have IRS pronouncements, like pronouncements, procedures, things like that. IRS audit procedures as well. That's another thing. There's a lot of information out there that you can find in ChatGPT. Probably could help you find those resources if you really, really need that. So from the client, and then also the IRS, like I said before, they are releasing a free software and they're bringing it out to the public slowly and surely. And AI in all areas, but including tax, is getting more and more competitive with a real life human being. For the individual, that is the best way to go about doing it. Now, I'm going to go answer this phone call and I'm going to call it a day. I think I've said enough. And I hope you have a good day. So, anyway, goodbye to you.